is the Business of Reselling podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Oman. Hello, everybody. It has been a minute. And by a minute, I mean like 5 months since I recorded an episode. Here I am. I'm back. I'm resurrecting the podcast. It has been quite a long time. I got some reasons, not necessarily good ones, but there are reasons why I haven't been doing episodes for a few months. But one of them is actually just the silliest thing ever. And it's just that like my husband didn't play hockey for the rest of the spring and through the summer. And it's usually when he goes to play hockey that I record episodes because that's when I have like free time and it's quiet and there's no one in the house. So hockey's back. And that's one of the reasons I have a little more time to record some podcasts for you. I got all excited to record this update episode. I'm just going to let you know how the business is going, talk a little bit about what I'd like to do with the podcast for the rest of the year, get your feedback, just a short sort of update episode. And I made myself like a dinner, and then I made myself I wanted a dessert tonight, and I was going to eat that before I recorded the podcast. But I didn't want to make like a whole batch of cookies or anything. So I made a mug cookie, and I don't know if you've ever made a mug cookie before, but it's like you put kind of a lot of cookie kind of ingredients in a mug, and then you nuke it for like a minute. And I've made different mug cakes for breakfast. I'm doing like some high protein stuff, and they've all turned out really well. This one was an absolute failure. It's just like this like mush of chocolate and sugar in the bottom of a mug, but I'm going to eat it anyway. I've just decided to save it for the end of the episode. I don't know why I'm telling you that, but this is just how my day is going. So let's get right to it. I'm going to give you a bit of an update and talk to you a bit about why I took a break from the podcast, update you on what's going on in Storage Warrior, give you some idea of what's going to happen going forward with the pod. So the hockey was a big thing, to be honest. But I was also finding that doing the podcast is pulling me away from the business a little bit more than I wanted. And I still haven't figured out the best way to leverage the podcast with the business and kind of figure out how they jive together so that one can help the other. So I haven't really like developed a good strategy for that. And because I didn't really have that vision, and I kind of still don't, I have to admit, I just kind of let the podcast go for a while. I needed a break. I was trying to accomplish a little bit too much, and the podcast was the thing that had to go. I did take some breaks this summer, like actual breaks from work. I know, craziest thing ever. We went over to the island. We did a little trip down to Seattle, and I just came back from Nashville with a friend. So that's been great, and I'm feeling pretty motivated as we get into the beginning of Q4, starting in just a few days. I'm feeling kind of great about the business, to be honest, kind of excited. And also today, we picked up an awesome Star Wars collection, original 1977 to 1983. Kenner stuff, all new in the package. So we'll be excited to post that. And I'm kind of feeling like I've got some momentum. I've got some motivation, ready to go for the fall. So what's going on in Storage Warrior? There's been a few changes. We've been thinking more strategically about how to scale rather than tactically. And we keep hitting on this waste diversion messaging as a way to kind of set our business apart from a lot of other reselling businesses. The idea of landfill diversion and not throwing things away, I think, is important to a lot of resellers. It's something that I come back to over and over and over again as we do our sourcing, as we find and discover amazing items that are on their way to landfill, and we get more and more of them. I've started to think like, this is the message that I want to be promoting. This is what I want to talk about when it comes to reselling, because we can be, as resellers, part of the circular economy. We can be part of this whole reuse, recycle initiative globally, wherever you're doing reselling, you're making this kind of an impact. And it's something I talk about a lot. I have talked about it on the podcast before. And it's becoming more of a core focus of our strategy, specifically when it comes to sourcing. So we've been working on getting inventory from places where it would otherwise be thrown away or recycled. So for example, a family cleaning out an estate, instead of getting everything hauled away in a dumpster, getting them to call us, or at least allowing us to pick through their dumpster. We're working with junk companies, junk haulers, and we're looking for more partners who are willing to allow us to look through their trucks and the things that they have destined for the landfill and see what we can get out of it to improve their waste diversion metrics and acquire inventory that would otherwise have ended up buried or incinerated or burned or something equally horrible. I'm still heavily involved in day-to-day operations in the business. I was able to pull back from that somewhat over the summer, because we had a summer worker, but they've gone back to school now, and we're kind of looking for somebody else. I'm trying to spend a little bit of time each day, though, moving forward with some kind of business development, like it's networking, reaching out to realtors or property managers or junk companies, or just posting on social media to ask for inventory leads and things like that. I think it's important that I at least do one little thing every day. So I've been trying to, and whether that takes 5 minutes or 1 hour, I'm just kind of working it into my daily schedule because I have a tendency to get caught up in things like listing and photos and sending offers to watchers and doing all of those kind of little day-to-day tasks that are super important for sales. And I think the reason that I get into them so much is because they create sales, and I like that. Um, but those are realistically tasks and skills that I could show somebody else. And so if I'm going to keep doing them, then I'm going to keep doing them for now, and that's fine. But I'm making a point of working on something more high level each and every day. Now, maybe I should get someone else to work on getting those leads for me, and then I can be the one to close them. Like maybe that's an option or something I could do. Marketing is not my strong point, and this has been kind of um, a tough problem for the business when it comes to scaling it up and growing it. Is I know that we need these partners. I know that we need contacts to help us get access to inventory, but I'm not really good at getting the message out there. Once I am talking to somebody, I'm very good at closing. So sales, it's like that's a forte for me, but marketing, less so. And one thing I'm really good at is in-person networking, and there just are not that many events or places where you can go and just chit chat with other business owners in a group. That's all gone since the pandemic, and they're rare. So I have to look for other methods. But I'm considering a marketing program that's run by somebody who I know from way back in my consulting days. And I think that could give me some support at a pretty fair price. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. How much time am I going to have for that as we get into Q4 and the busy sales that come along with that? I'm not sure. But if I can hire a part-time photographer again, I'm always looking for somebody to help with that kind of stuff. Then, I should be able to continue to focus on the marketing that I know I need to do. Sales, I've heard lots. I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of complaining in Facebook groups and reseller groups about poor sales, and there has been for as long as I've been reselling. And for those of you who've been doing it longer than I have, I'm sure you remember all of these types of complaints. It's just a refrain that percolates through all of these groups. But I would say I hear this more and more and more and more frequently. And that it's getting harder to do reselling, that it's getting harder to find the buyers, that the buyers are getting tougher. And I have a tendency to agree with some of these statements. I mean, they've talked about this a lot over the last few months on the Pure Hustle podcast, which if you don't listen to, you absolutely should. I think it's probably the best reseller podcast out there. But I mean, these guys have a really a really, I mean, it's subjective and objective, but they're smart guys who talk very realistically about how reselling works. And, they've discussed, some of the aspects of reselling that have gotten more difficult, policy changes, increases in fees, on eBay specifically, what feels like a requirement to participate in promoted ads, which reduces our profits, more competition in sourcing. So there's all of these things that do present bigger challenges maybe than they used to in reselling. The fact is, if you get your hands on super hot inventory, you're going to sell it. And that's a fact. But those sort of grindy items that sit around longer in your store, or that there's more people selling those similar items, that part of the reselling world is probably getting harder. And that's, to be honest, where the majority of us are sitting when it comes to inventory. Like we're tending to get the low hanging fruit, the stuff that's easier to find. And so there's more of it on the market, and that's just how it works. So we have to find other ways to differentiate. So anyway, what I'm getting to is that sales are so-so and have been so-so for the last few months. We've definitely had some fantastic selling days. Our local sales are really strong. I think maybe just with economic uncertainty, or perhaps just the expense of living here in Vancouver, that more people are turning to buying used, like, household items and sporting goods and things like that, things that we wouldn't ship. So those sales have actually been really strong, and I've been happy about that, whereas eBay has been a tougher go. And Poshmark has been relatively steady, but we honestly don't sell much at all on Poshmark ever. It's not a platform I focus on a lot, even though I like it because it's easy to use. But anyway, it just kind of rolls along and it's fine. But I still believe that it goes back to the type of inventory that we've been sourcing. Sourcing has been sort of hodgepodge, and that's partly our fault. It's a result of our shift to this sort of new sourcing strategy and positioning. When you're sourcing from the trash in various ways, you're going to get a super random assortment of items every single time. And as I've talked about on the podcast multiple times, one of the best ways to get lots and lots of eyes on your store is to post dozens or hundreds of very similar items. And you just don't get that when you're sourcing from the garbage, unless somebody throws out their entire comic book collection, which I can say with confidence I've not seen yet. But I bet it happens. So we still need to be buying collections and sort of large groupings of similar items, because that's like really what brings momentum to the store. So we did buy a bunch of comic books recently, and this was a great purchase because it was somebody who we'd previously bought from, and they had some more to sell us. And I just love when that happens, because it means that that seller was happy with us and they thought of us and they wanted to come back. And then we recently purchased a collection of vintage Star Wars stuff, and we thought that was all of it, and we just found out today that it wasn't, and we got more of that. So it's all like brand new, sealed on card or sealed in the box Star Wars toys from all the original movies, and it's pretty exciting. It's sort of like Holy Grail stuff, so I'd be happy to post that. So that kind of stuff, I know once we move that into the store, that's really going to increase our sales overall. It's going to bring a lot of traffic to our store, a lot of attention. The algorithm likes that, and people will see all of the 7,000 things that we have for sale. So I think our sourcing is ultimately the reason that our sales have been really up and down and a little bit less consistent than we'd like them to be. So we need to work on that and making sure that we're balancing out the waste diversion type of sourcing from the collections and downsizing that we also enjoy buying. So I don't know I wasn't really going anywhere with this episode. I made my mug cookie and I'm going to eat it. And I was just here telling you that I'm back. And hopefully you find that kind of exciting. I don't know, but I might as well ask, since there are going to be some new listeners. I have noticed a bunch of new listeners and a bunch of new subscribers on the YouTube channel, even though I haven't been posting new content. So if you're listening to this and you haven't reached out with your feedback, I would love to hear it. What would you like me to do a new episode about? I still have a big list from when I originally started the podcast with all kinds of ideas, and I have many, many items on that list that I can still work through. But it's more fun if I get feedback from you, the listener, and find out what you would like to hear me talk about. Maybe you would like me to have a specific guest. I'm open to that. If you're curious and you want to hear me do a different style of podcast rather than this sort of like solo pod that I usually do. If there's a topic you want me to explore, like bring it. Q4 is coming. We're going to be working hard. There should be lots of excitement out there. So your call to action is, what would you like me to do a new episode about? Let me add to my list, and I will start with the things that you ask me to do. So with that, the topic of the next episode is totally up in the air. If I get some ideas from you, I will do episode on one of those. Otherwise, I'll pull from my list. So if you're listening on Spotify or another podcaster, don't forget that you can head over to youtube.com/@Storagewarrior podcast, and you can also subscribe to us there. And sometimes I post videos. I really do. And I'm going to do it again. So head over there and subscribe. And if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube and you're like, maybe I should take this with me, go to pod.link/business of reselling or businessofreselling.com, and you can subscribe using any podcaster that you want. And don't forget, we're always buying. Always buying. Hook us up with a great pick in the Pacific Northwest or British Columbia, and you will receive a gift. That's all for now. I'm excited to chat with you again in a week or two. Talk soon. Bye-bye.